or fraternities and sororities or things like that and go on campus. But when you bring up smoking and vaping, I also think about the middle schoolers and high schoolers who are maybe doing those things and their parents don't realize it or don't realize that. It's every time I've done a story on vaping that does come up. Is there a thought that maybe there needs to be a study? Because certainly I go back to school and those kids who are seemingly healthy but engaging in a behavior that may put them at more risk, it seems like maybe more information is relevant there, because I don't know if this study can address that. I don't know if Dr. Adams, you can maybe address that.
I can say a few things. One is anyone who smokes or vapes, the effect of that is lung changes, lung tissue changes, and immune strength changes. So this finding isn't young adults, but that was our sample. Mm-hmm. And there's more now that talking about smoking and COVID severity among all ages. And yes, of course, adolescents of any age need these messages. We found that in the past, adolescents used to initiate smoking and more than young adults, for instance. And if you could stop them or prevent them from starting to smoke when adolescents, they were less likely to ever smoke. But now we see that young adults have been more likely to initiate smoking than adolescents. But nevertheless, it's all important for all age groups, and particularly adolescents, because it's difficult to stop smoking.
Yes, it is. Once you start, I think people, I know people's trouble. Yeah, Dr. Irwin, go ahead.
I would like to add something. The slope of the curve of electronic nicotine devices and vaping, if you look at that, the curve from say 12 years old to 25-year-old, the slope of the curve, it starts slowly, 12, 13 years, but the slope of the curve is very, very steep. And therefore, and also fewer adolescents are now smoking cigarettes than ever in the past. So actually teenagers have got the message that smoking cigarettes is bad. What we haven't given them is the same message that electronic nicotine devices put you at the same risk in many ways. So I think the messaging, we can take the data from this study and still message it to adolescents. We don't have specific data to speak to what the risk is because we don't have an age group like that to study in these analyses. But it still is a very good message to be given to adolescents. And adolescents actually see physicians more often than young adults do. So in some ways, it's better if the clinician would have more opportunities with the adolescent age group.
Well, I would imagine that, they still have to go to their pediatricians, even in high school, see if they want boards to do anything like that. And I think even for coaches and anyone who is reaching out and talking to people, these young people, certainly getting that across to them in a way that make them hear that, it's their health and safety as well. And certainly more information, always better. Well, Dr. Irwin and Dr. Adams, I appreciate it. Certainly the study has been very interesting for me to read, and I think all the information that we can get on how to better protect ourselves against COVID while we cross our fingers for a vaccine and hope that comes sooner than later certainly helps us all. So I appreciate both your times, Dr. Sally Adams and Dr. Charles Irwin with the UCSF Division of Adolescent and Adult Medicine at UCF Benioff Children's Hospital in San Francisco. Thank you very much. And of course, if you want more interviews, you can go to coronavirusnow.com. Thanks so much.
The need for change. But she also spoke about the balance we have to strike. The balance every day. Continuing reform, continuing to work to make it a safer city. Those things do not contradict. And too often, I think, in the public dialogue, there are those who only look at one piece or another, only talk about the imperative of public safety or only talk about the imperative of reform. We need both. Safety and fairness need to walk hand in hand. I've been saying that since 2013, and that is what is animated. These are changes we have made in policing in New York City, and we will make more. But remember, as we speak right now, a lot of communities are feeling the profound challenge of crime and violence. They are fighting back. You saw it yesterday right here, what good people in Bed-Stuy are doing to fight back. I was in East Harlem the other day, a wonderful community march, people taking back their community. in Harlem last Saturday night, you see community members who want justice and want safety and think those two must go together. And that is the future of this city. So yesterday represented a step in that direction. Now, to really have justice and safety, we need to have our criminal justice system function again. So I am imploring everyone at the Office of Court Administration, please, we need our court system to run again. We need it to be open next month as fully as humanly possible. Yes, we need to take every precaution for the folks who serve on juries, for the folks who work in the court system, but we cannot keep this city safe if we don't have a functioning court system. It has been too many months already. City is coming back strong. We're obviously showing remain healthy, but we owe it to our communities and we owe it to our police officers to restart the court system as vigorously as possible and as quickly as possible. So please, hear our plea, because that's how we will keep our communities safe. Now, back to the point about reopening schools and providing support for our children, our families, our parents. Look, we know, because we have one of the biggest surveys that's ever been conducted in the city, 400,000 people responded, parents from all over the city, every corner of this city, 75% said we want schools open and we want our kids to go to in September. And we've talked about how we'll do it. For now, with a blended learning approach, where the typical child goes 2 or 3 days a week to school in the classroom. But so many parents have said that they can't make it work if they don't get more childcare. We have been working since we saw the results of that survey, and we obviously knew this was an imperative. We've been trying to find every way to create new childcare and to build it from scratch, honestly, because we're having to create something that didn't exist before on this scale, accommodate a new need and a new reality. We initially said, how much could we do? And we thought maybe we'd do 50,000 childcare seats. And then we realized with a blended format that actually turns into 100,000 families that can be served. We're going to use every conceivable space, community centers, libraries, cultural organizations, whatever we can find in communities. We're going to have one approach for early childhood, another approach for K to 8. And the goal will be to start by serving 100,000 kids and giving those families, those parents, that balance in their life, that relief, that support. But then we aim to go farther. Now we've got a little under 2 months until school begins. We've got a lot to do, and nothing like this has ever been attempted on this time frame. But we're going to find a way to do this and hopefully much more. Here to talk about it is the woman who has led the charge in so many ways. And I want to thank her because in her role, she doesn't get the credit she deserves, and she's a very modest human being, but she's actually been one of the most central figures in our fight against the coronavirus. As our budget director, keeping this city able to function and pay the bills and make sure services are provided to the city, including food for every New Yorker who needs it and all the additional expenses around the coronavirus. She helped lead the way in expanding our testing capacity and now is helping to lead the way on the expansion of childcare. She used to be a deputy commissioner at the Administration for Children's Services, so it's something she knows well. I want to thank her for extraordinary work and invite to speak our budget director, director of OMB, Melanie Hartzog. I don't hear you. Can we hear you? Start again, Melanie. Make sure you're unmuted. We don't hear you yet. Technology.
Okay,
works.
sir, can you hear me?
There you go.
Thank you, sir. So just be very quick about this. Our plan is designed to provide full supervised coverage on remote days. We're building out a program, as the mayor mentioned, to serve 100,000 children, including preschoolers and school-age children, that is kindergarten through 8th grade. First, space is critical. We'll be exploring all viable space options to accommodate children and youth, looking at both public and private locations that meet our needs. Second is programming and seeking to expand our contracted early childhood portfolio, as well as community programs and our after-school providers that are under contract with the Department for Youth and Community Development. Programs will follow the Department of Health and Mental Health's guidance, which is based on New York State requirements of 15 children per room. We want to ensure that both staff and children participating are safe. Therefore, we will provide funding within the programming for PPE. We are framing these remote days, as the mayor mentioned, as learning labs, partnering with libraries and cultural institutions to provide care and programming. And it will include activities like arts, recreation, tutoring, local field trips where possible, and of course, social and emotional supports. And finally, we will have some availability by the start of the school year. We are building it, as the mayor said, as we're going, with capacity increasing on a rolling basis.
Thank you very, very much, Melanie. Thank you to your whole team for all the hard work you've put in. And this is going to take a lot of creativity and a lot of effort. But again, right now we can say that 100,000 kids will benefit more than we had before, and that's really important. And we're going to keep building on the time. So a lot to do, but we will be incessant about creating opportunities for families so that those who do choose to have their child go back to school will have all the support possible. With that, I'm going to turn to our indicators. And again, a good day because of your hard work, everyone. Number one, daily number of people admitted to hospitals for suspected COVID-19. Threshold is 200, report 65. Number two, daily number of people in health and hospitals ICUs. Threshold 375, today's report 332. And once again, most importantly, percentage of people testing citywide positive for COVID-19. And again, emphasizing this is now based on about 40,000 tests a day and growing. So we're getting the sample we've ever gotten in the history of New York City in this crisis. Threshold 15%, today's report, again, 2%, a very good number. A few words in Spanish. Las escuelas en nuestra ciudad van a abrir en el otoño y los estudiantes van a tener un horario flexible. Sabemos que las familias van a necesitar ayuda para que este plan funcione. Por eso es que vamos a brindar más cuidado infantil a partir de este otoño. Es importante que nuestros niños regresen a sus estudios para que la ciudad se pueda recuperar. With that, we will turn to our colleagues in the media. Please let me know the name and outlet of each journalist.
We'll now begin our Q&A. As a reminder, we're also joined today by OMB Director Melanie Hartzog and DDC and SCA Commissioner Lorraine, and also Senior Advisor Dr. Jay Varma. The first question today goes to Andrew Siff from NBC.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and everyone on the call. My first question has to do with Phase 4 opening. You alluded to yesterday being in deliberations with the governor. It's scheduled to start Monday. That's 4 days away. So what can you tell us about Phase 4, and will it include any indoor spaces like museums?
So appreciate the question, Andrew. It's so important. What I tell you is this. We're still working out the final plans with the state. The state is feeling cautious. The city's feeling cautious. We really want to get this right in light of what we're seeing around the country. I want to emphasize this is the X factor now. To see so many other states going in the wrong direction is causing us a lot of care in how we approach this decision. So we'll have more to say on it as early as later today or tomorrow, but I'll give you what I think makes sense as the basic outline. I think the separation here is outdoor and indoor. I think the outdoor activities can proceed, do make sense. Of course we need distancing, of course we need face coverings, but when you think about the things that are outdoors, that are part of Phase 4, obviously the sports events, those were already approved. Think about the zoo, think about the botanical gardens, think about outdoor film and TV production. The outdoor elements I feel good about and confident about so long as we're clear about the standards, and of course everything needs oversight and enforcement. The indoor is causing me pause. The indoor should proceed only with tremendous caution and very strict rules. If there's going to be more indoor, it has to be when we are certain it will work, and with really distinct rules about how many people can participate and what precautions. And there can't be a slippery slope there. As we've seen, indoor is the challenge, and we have to be really tight about it. So I think there's substantial elements of Phase 4 that can move ahead. Others we have to be very careful about and about. Go ahead, Andrew.
My second question is on behalf of my colleague, Melissa. The question is, why have you been silent on the protest on the Brooklyn Bridge yesterday? Specifically, what it appears from the video is that protesters attacked high-ranking members of the police department. There were police officers injured. Unless we're wrong, you haven't said anything about it yet. Is that acceptable, and what do you have to say about it?
Now, it's absolutely unacceptable. I've said it many times. There's no situation in which it's acceptable to attack a police officer, period. I talked to Terry Monahan after I heard that he was there. Thank God he's okay. No, it's not acceptable. And here's what is the reality. Anyone who does that will suffer the consequences. So we've said this now for months. I've said it very clearly. Peaceful protest is honored in New York City, always has been. There is no acceptable violent protest. Violent protest will be stopped, and there'll be consequences for anyone involved. And anyone, anywhere, whether in protest or anything else, who assaults a police officer, it's unacceptable, and they will suffer the consequences.
The next is Courtney Gross from New York One.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Hope you're doing well.
How are you?
I'm good, as good as one can be under the circumstances.
Amen.
Two questions. The first on the child care. I mean, you say you have 100,000 slots or preparing for 100,000 slots. Will 100,000 slots be available by the time school starts, and how much space do you actually need? And then I have another topic.
Sure. The answer is yes, and the goal is to have it online. Look, we know we're dealing with the great unknown here, Courtney, but the goal is to have everything ready for September. We'll roll in as much as we can and keep going from that goal on. Both Melanie Hartzog and Lorraine Grillo have been doing extraordinary work. Lorraine has, and everyone at School Construction Authority constantly does miracles in terms of finding space and converting space rapidly. So this is the dream team. If these two are on the job, I have tremendous confidence it will happen. Melanie, Lorraine, you want to say anything other about the specific what we're doing for September?
Sure. How to? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, our teams are on the ground dealing with, as you said earlier, sir, not-for-profits, libraries, business communities, business groups, individuals. We are everywhere throughout this city, and we will find space. And in addition, while you're on the, I do want to put out the website to anybody who has existing space. It's www.nycsca.org/real-estate/sites. Thank you.
Very much. Courtney?
And the second question is, once again, we don't have anyone from the NYPD on this call today. When was the last time you met in person with the police commissioner? And, we haven't seen you two together, excuse me, for quite some time. Are you still confident? I know you've been asked this before, but are you still confident at this moment in his leadership?
Yes. Tuesday.
The next question is for Yoav from the city.
Hi, everyone. Mr. Mayor, I wanted to ask you about a video that my colleague Rosie Goldenson got. It shows police officers in the end of May trying to remove a homeless person from the subways, ostensibly for taking up 2 seats. To removing him, one officer punches the homeless person in the head with these just very aggressive punches. The individual is later pepper sprayed and I'm wondering if you saw the video and if you could share your thoughts on it. I'm also wondering if the officer in question is still on the streets, and if you don't know, should he be?
Yoav, a very good question. I have not seen the video. I'll make sure I can get you an update on both what has been determined from that incident and what the officer is, but I don't have that in front of me now. Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to ask something about the ULURP announcement. Vicky Bean has said that one of the key criteria for which projects are going to move forward is an emphasis on economic and racial equality. And I'm just wondering if you can say more about that. Is that how you're going to prioritize which projects move forward?
Look, as always, the City Planning Commission looks at a number of factors and what's best for the future. I have long believed that city planning should not just look at abstract planning principles, practical realities that matter to New Yorkers, like affordable housing and job creation. But yes, of course, everything we're doing in the government right now is about addressing disparity and inequality and using the tools of government in every way possible to help communities that have been for so long left out and that bore the brunt of this crisis. So that will certainly be what we do going forward.
The next is James Ford from PIX.
Yeah, hi, good morning.
How you doing?
So far, so good, and thanks for asking. Initially, I was going to ask about that video of the police officers with this allegedly homeless person. I heard your answer. Nonetheless, the fact that video does exist and that people observed this incident, I mean, can you just respond to the fact that it happened at all?
James, it's a very fair question, but I want to emphasize the first thing to understand is the whole story. And we don't always get the whole story from a brief video clip. Sometimes we get a lot and what we need to know. Other times there's a lot more to it. So it's never right to comment until there's been an actual investigation. This just don't know the status of the investigation, but I'll make sure we get it to you. We take every incident seriously, as you've seen. Again, I emphasize the vast majority of our officers do their job properly. Anyone who does not, you have seen the discipline process is speeding up now. And the suspensions you saw in the last few weeks are evidence of it. So we'll get a full review of what happened here. We'll be public about it. If further action is needed, we'll be public about that as well. Go ahead, Jim.
Just a quick follow-up for my colleague, Nicole Johnson. The march across the Brooklyn Bridge yesterday ended up also being joined by Sergeants Benevolent Association and Blue Lives Matter. Can you comment about that, noting your history, particularly with the SBA?
Look, I don't know everything about the march. My understanding is it was started by community people who are concerned to make sure their community is safe, and I respect that greatly. And that's what I talked about in the opening today. We have to keep communities safe, get community and police working together, and the need to constantly reform the NYPD. We can do all that at once. But the SBA only practice division. They foment hatred. They don't try and help us move forward. I have been fighting with them for years. And they have been fighting with our police leadership for years. They attacked Timmy O'Neill viciously. They've attacked Dermot Shea. They don't try to create anything good. They only try and tear down, which is why I have no respect for the leadership of the SBA.
The next is Jake Offenhart from Gothamist.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Mayor. There you go. I wanted to ask about the 1,300 New Yorkers who are still facing criminal charges for violating the curfew you later rescinded. Many of them were physically detained by the police and had their freedom taken away for hours. Should these people still continue to face criminal summons for violating the queue? Should the DAs toss the charges? And what do you think is fair here?
Jake, it depends on the offense. Respectfully, a lot of times it's not just one thing. And I don't want to tell the DAs how to do their job, and I can tell you it's case by case. So it really is up to them to evaluate each one.
In the case of people being arrested for violating the curfew specifically, though, we watched this happen over and over again. People were out at 8:30 or 9:30. They were arrested and charged with specifically violating your curfew. Should those cases?
I respect you and I respect your reporting, but I don't agree with the frame of the question. It's just too simplistic to say that's the whole story. So we had the curfew for a purpose, because we saw too much violence of different kinds and we had to end the violence, and we did end the violence. And now adjudicating what should happen in each case depends on the specific of the case. That's just all there is to it.
This is Abu from Bangladesh Patrika.
Hello, Mayor. How are you?
Good, Abu. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much. I have two questions. Number one, it's been a long time. The New York City Department of Finance parking code or parking code, they are closed, and the people who have a lot of tickets. They are not even some people. They are not even able to pay. What is your suggestion to them?
It's a good question, Abu, and I don't know enough about what's happening right now with parking violations, so we'll get you an answer later today. Look, obviously a lot of agencies had to change what they were doing or restrict what they were doing because of the coronavirus. We're trying to bring back as many functions as much as possible while making sure we're fair to folks in the meantime who might have been affected. So we'll get you an update on that. I don't know the specifics. Go ahead.
And then there is a guy who born in Bangladesh, killed day before yesterday, brutally in Manhattan. His name is Fahim. Do you have any update of this? Who is the killer, or what is the update of the case?
Yeah, Abu, again, I apologize. I do not. Obviously, a horrible tragedy when we lose someone, and my condolences to your community. I don't have an update, but we'll get you one in the next few hours for sure.
We have time for two more. The next is Steve Burns from WCBS 880.
Thanks. Good to be with you, Mr. Mayor. Wanted to first ask about daycare and the announcement here. It seems like you're hoping to have most of the capacity available when it's needed by September, but not sure about it yet. So see if there are any plans, what the plans are for selection process, application process, who may get first dibs, just how that's all going to be decided.
Yeah, great question, Steve. I'll start, and then Melanie and Lorraine can add. Look, we are doing this rapidly. It was very important to get a sense of how many parents wanted their kids back. And until we had that, we didn't have enough information to really test demand. We got that information in the last couple of weeks. We now realize there's huge demand. We're building capacity rapidly. It is amazing the creativity you're seeing with the leadership of Melanie Hartzog and Lorraine Grillo, the number of locations they're finding, the way they're thinking about quickly converting those and having those ready. So I have a lot of faith in our ability to hit that 100,000 mark and keep going. As to applications, et cetera, that's some stuff we still have to work through. But again, Lorraine or Melanie, you want to speak to that, when we're going to have the next in the process?
Sure, I can start and Lorraine can jump in. Just in terms of how we'll actually stand up the capacity through community-based organizations, the goal is, as I mentioned, leveraging our existing contracted providers. And so there's outreach happening as we speak today to each of these community-based organizations, asking them if they have additional capacity. And if they do, we will amend their contracts quickly to be able to provide that additional capacity, if need be, get it licensed quickly with our partners at Department of Health, and do any outfitting of the space that's necessary, thanks to the leadership of Lorraine. I don't know, Lorraine would like to add a little bit more to that.
Thank you, Mel. Actually, you've really said it all. We are working throughout the city. There is no one specific place we're concentrating on. We're concentrating in all 5 boroughs. So hopefully we will be able to find adequate space in every single borough.
Right. So Steve, broad-based approach, and we want to keep building that capacity. And again, Lorraine's point about we need anyone who has space that might work for childcare to let us know of their willingness to work with us. Lorraine, what is that email or website they can go to?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me? Yes. Hello?
Yes.
It is www.nycsca.org/real estate/sites.
There you go. So please, to our colleagues in the media, if you could spread that around, because we want to make sure that everyone who wants to help us build up this childcare capacity involved quickly. And I think there's a lot of people who have sites, who have property, who actually would like the opportunity to do good and obviously bring in some revenue at the same time. Did you have a follow-up, Steve?
Just real quick on a second topic. The MTA has said it may run out of emergency funding by the end of the month. I know its funding isn't necessarily your jurisdiction, but is the city working on any contingency plans should the MTA need to institute some cuts, and they've said those cuts could be massive on a scale we haven't seen before. Is there anything the city has in mind to mitigate that should it happen?
It's a great question, Steve. It is not our jurisdiction, you're right, but we care deeply. I care deeply about what happens with the MTA. It affects all 8.6 million people I represent. This has to be solved with federal stimulus money. There is a hope and prayer that that will happen in the next few weeks. I'm still far from certain about that, but that's the only solution that will really, really work. I've been fighting for it. I am having a conversation with federal today to try and continue to push the stimulus effort. But I have confidence the state will do everything it can to come up with the best possible alternatives if the MTA kind of had trouble, but we don't have those resources at this point. So this is about both doing all it can to be creative under the circumstances and us fighting like everything we got to get done in Washington for the help we deserve and need.
Last question for today goes to Gersh from Streets Blog.
How are you guys doing today? I really appreciate you taking the call.
Hey, Gersh, how are you?
Two quick questions, Mr. Mayor. First, today, Bike New York demanded major reforms of the NYPD, saying that the department, quote, has not been on board with efforts by the DOT and other parts of city government to make New York City safe and welcoming for bike riding. Now, their list of recommendations include getting the NYPD out of traffic enforcement, getting officers out of their squad cars so they can interact with their communities, and also getting cops out of bike and bus lanes. Do you have a comment on the group's assertion that NYPD is failing to be a good Vision Zero partner?
Oh, I disagree. Gersh, you already know my answer. I have said from day one, from the moment Bill Bratton made a speech about Vision Zero, I think even before he became our first police commissioner in this administration, that NYPD has been essential to Vision Zero. They believe in it. They've put a huge amount of energy into it. We all do better. If you say, is there more to do? Yeah. I don't doubt for a moment the commitment of the NYPD. And I just see these things differently than some of the advocates do. Traffic enforcement, I think, does the NYPD. Yeah, there's no question we can do better at continuing to clear bike lanes. I want us to do that. We've talked before about needing to be conscientious about getting police vehicles out of bike lanes unless it's an emergency. We got more to do on that. There's no question there's things to do better. If the question is commitment and understanding that Vision Zero is crucial to saving lives, no, it's absolutely there. Go ahead.
Okay, and my second question is actually also related to the cops. Earlier today in this press conference, you spoke about the unacceptable behavior of a small number of protesters who have allegedly been violent towards cops. But as you know, yesterday the New York Times put out a story with scores of videos, some not seen by the public before, showing egregious police misconduct against protesters. The kind of behavior you have said before is isolated, but the Times report suggests that they are not. And I don't comment on the Times investigation, so could you do that?
Yeah, we're going to review that very carefully. I don't know the exact reality of how many of those videos have been seen before or not, either by the public or by the NYPD. Whether there's anything that has not been seen before, it will be evaluated immediately. We intend there to be a fast, clear disciplinary process, but also an objective process that figures out where discipline is needed and where, in other cases, it may not be. So look, I don't accept any situation where a police officer does not follow the rules of their profession. We need our police officers to be constantly aware of the high standard that they are held to and to stick to it. I truly believe the vast majority do. But for those who do not, there has to be a clear process, investigation, and follow through in terms of discipline. I've said that a lot of times, and we've shown it. And again, no one's ever happy when a police officer be suspended. But Commissioner Shea has made very clear that when he sees evidence, he's going to act and act resolutely. And he's actually done it faster than I've seen any other police commissioner do it. And we're going to keep increasing and improving the speed of that process. Okay. Everybody, as we conclude, look, I just want to make a point about the big announcement today in terms of childcare, because it's a big announcement because of the big impact it means for the people of this city, for the lives of everyday people. And I keep bringing things back to the lives of people in every neighborhood of this city, the people I serve, the people whose lives I've really gotten to know. And I know this is the kind of thing that truly matters. Parents who have been struggling for months to somehow find a way to keep their livelihood while educating their children, or, God forbid, they've lost their livelihood, still trying to do best they can by their children, but worried to death about how to pay the bills. We've got to do better. We all together have fought back this disease in an extraordinary manner. We've got to keep doing that. But we've got to give more ability to parents who back to work that capacity, and the child care will make all the difference in the world. And here's where the can-do of the city comes in. The last few weeks, as I said, it became clear a surprising number of parents wanted their kids back in school, and we needed to do something about it. This team here at City Hall immediately said, we will do it, we can do it. You heard from Melanie Hartzog and Lorraine Grillo. They and their teams have had an extraordinary spirit. No sense that there is a barrier, just the ability to get things done. This is a classic New York City attitude. We will make things happen no matter what. So we're telling you today, this day in July, that there'll be childcare for 100,000 kids, and we aim to go farther. That families will get that childcare regardless of ability to pay. And that we will make sure every parent who needs help, that we're going to constantly look for every option to help them, because in New York City, we don't stop. We keep creating, we keep fighting back this crisis. Thank you, everybody.
Prior to this appointment, Ms. Lord served as the President and Chief Executive Officer of a subsidiary of Textron Incorporated. In that role, she led a multi-billion-dollar business with a broad range of products and services supporting defense, homeland security, aerospace, and infrastructure protection for customers around the world. More than 30 years of experience in the defense industry, Ms. Lord previously served on boards and task forces for a variety of organizations, including the National Defense Industrial Association, the U.S.-India Business Council, the Center for New American Security, and the U.S. Naval Institute for this Reagan National Defense Forum virtual fireside chat. And we hope you enjoy the conversation.
Secretary Lord from the Department of Defense, welcome to the podcast. We're really excited to have you here on Reaganism.
Thank you so much, Roger. Great to be talking to you, and always a fan of the Ronald Reagan Institute.
Well, that's great to hear, and we do appreciate your participation in the Reagan National Defense Forum, and we're excited to have this one-on-one conversation. Just for our viewers and listeners, Ellen Lord is known to be the Undersecretary for Acquisition and Sustainment in the Department of Defense. How did you get to this role? What's your background in the world of the military and the aerospace and defense industry?
All right. So I began life as a chemist, actually a little bit of a nerd in the lab, and of industry for about 11 years for a multi-industry corporation. Gave me the opportunity to move segments into aerospace and defense, where I was for about 22 years. So I worked my way through general management and then to run a segment of the corporation, and had a lot of interaction with DC, with DOD, back and forth. And one day was incredibly surprised to get a phone call asking me to be a political, and I had no idea what that meant. I said, thank you very much. That's flattering, but no, thank you. I'd love the board. And reflected on that for about a week and thought about what it meant and decided that it was time to give back. So I entered the world of DOD via a lovely hearing on the Hill. Had no idea what that was all about. So here I am. So very, very pleased to be here.
And of course, you were a CEO of an important defense company. Coming into the E-Ring and the Pentagon, how important is it to you on a day-to-day basis having that industry background to carry out your work as the Undersecretary for Acquisition and Sustainment?
It's very important from my point of view because I think I bring a different perspective than those who have been in government their entire careers. They obviously bring a very, very incredibly important perspective as well. But I have experience with what it's like trying to do business with the government and perhaps understand some of the with communications and understanding what is going on. So I really try to be the voice industry inside the government and also try to explain how we do the things we do and we do them.
Well, let's jump to current events, and your role has really been pivotal for the Department of Defense in navigating the COVID-19 crisis. Kind of explain to everybody the Undersecretary for Acquisition and Sustainment really finds, and herself, in the kind of the ground zero for the Department of Defense and its response to COVID-19?
Well, frankly, I look at defense industrial base as the nexus of economic security and national security. And the defense industrial base is one of my primary responsibilities. So I thought it was really incumbent on my team to get out and start communicating very, very quickly. And I'm incredibly fortunate to have very, very talented individuals with a variety of backgrounds who rallied, and we decided that we would work for our industrial organizations that we typically use to sort of amplify and echo what we have to say. And we use them as convening forums to be able to start transmitting to industry what was going on, and frankly, more importantly, listen to what was happening on their side, because our job number one was to get everybody back to work. Again, to maintain readiness, but also for economic security for the country.
So economic security and national security, when you're an industrial base, those are hand in hand. Over 10,000 companies that you're keeping an eye on, and give us the latest numbers.
Well, I'll tell you, what we do is we track two different groups of companies, one through the Defense Contract Management Agency, which tend to be a little bit larger companies, a little bit over 10,000, and then through the Defense Logistics Agency for more of the vendors, track about 11,000. So I actually have a few numbers here, because what we did was we convened 3 times a week meetings with industry associations, and then I started holding an every morning tag-up meeting at 7 a.m. with our extended team, and I got numbers every day. So from DCMA, we started tracking closures as well as DLA. So we've had 279 closures of companies that DCMA tracks, and 273 of those have reopened, which I am very, very pleased about, and I'd like to think helped in that a bit. From DLA, they track a little over 11,000. They had 692 closures cumulatively, and 664 reopened. Now, what we knew was that the landscape was pretty complex initially, because local and state governments were putting out shelter-in-place orders and so forth. So one of the first things I did to follow very quickly behind the Department of Homeland Security and put a memo stating that the defense industrial base was critical infrastructure. They were authorized to work. And in fact, that particular document was actually used by employees as they were being pulled over by local law enforcement, telling them they had to go home and shelter in place. But along with that, we had to make sure everyone was safe. So we were really channeling a lot of the CDC guidelines on social distancing and so forth.
That's pretty impressive numbers. We're looking at what some are characterizing as a second wave. Certainly numbers of infections are going up. Do you see that impacting companies, the over 20,000, if you combine the DCMA numbers and the DLA numbers? Or do you feel, are you getting word that enough processes in place, the PPE, the mask, what have you, that they can continue operating in this environment?
I think there will continue to be challenges. However, everyone is much, much better educated now and are proactively taking measures. I've been really, really impressed with the CEOs of small, mid, large companies and what